the crumpled bed sheets wrapped around the two people, mingling with their rapid breathing, sometimes settling into tight hugs as if afraid that when the morning came, everything would vanish like a dream. Rose's body under Levi struggled slightly. Each of Rose's movements was like a wordless melody full of emotion, but also filled with tenderness. The two of them had spent more than 3 hours making love together, ending with a climax that made them both soar on cloud 9. Welcome to our channel, Secret Love Tales. If you love engaging and emotional love stories, then come to our channel. Here, we will bring you stories full of surprises, touching and engaging. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any interesting stories. Are there any guys who don't have a girlfriend these days? Guys who are bored with their wives, please leave your phone number at the end of the video. Jane will randomly choose you, and depending on your support for the channel, you can make friends and date. Who knows, maybe we will become a couple. In today's video, Jane would like to present to you a story called The Boss Without Her Husband. Please watch along. Levi stood in front of the purple hair salon. His back was soaked with sweat. The purple sign was like the cotton candy he often saw at the fair. The shop was small, but through the glass door, it was shiny and sparkling like a jewelry store. Levi was both worried and nervous, wondering if anyone would accept him as an apprentice. Seeing him like this, they would probably kick him out. The glass door swung open. The sound of the bell jingling startled Levi. Then she stepped out like a living testament to the charm that surpassed all conventional standards. She was not very tall, with a plump figure, and flawless white skin that looked like she had just stepped out of a skin cream commercial. Her eyes were sharp, always sparkling with a teasing look as if nothing in this world could make her sad for long. Her brown hair was wavy and bouncy, the ends slightly curled, falling carelessly to her shoulders. Rose wore a burgundy camisole. Her breasts were sexy, her shoulders were slim, and her collarbones were seductive. The tight black pencil skirt accentuated her slim waist and long legs. Her crystal high heels made each step light but powerful. Her lips were painted bright red. As soon as their eyes met, Levi was confused, not knowing where to look. Rose stood there looking at him from head to toe, her eyes both cold and curious. Meanwhile, Levi, with his faded t-shirt and worn slippers, looked like he had just come from the fields to Kevin Street to find relatives. She spoke, her voice warm but slightly sarcastic. "Are you looking for someone, or are you lost?" Levi stuttered, his voice as small as a mosquito. "Yes, I came to ask to learn a trade." Rose raised her eyebrows, crossing her arms over her chest. The movement made the tank top seem to protest, stretching a little more. Levi immediately lowered his head, not daring to look straight. Hung pursed his lips, holding back his laughter. "Come here." She stepped into the shop. The tight dress made her butt shake back and forth, revealing her flawless white bare legs. She walked in, letting the door close automatically, and Levi hurried after her like a puppy following its owner. The interior of the shop was even more luxurious than Levi had imagined. From the tables and chairs to the mirrors, everything was shiny, as if it had just been covered in silver. When Rose sat on the chair wearing a short, strapless dress, she bent down to wash her customer's hair, revealing 2 plump white breasts that swayed with each movement of her hands. Levi saw his eyes glued to her breasts and then glanced down at her thighs. After washing her customer's hair, Rose stood at the counter, her slender hands gently stroking the tablet. Levi stood still like a student being called to the board for an oral test. Rose turned back, half smiling. "So what do you know about hairdressing?" Levi was confused. Actually, he didn't know anything. From a young age, he only had experience cutting his own hair with scissors at home, and every time he did, his mother scolded him. But today, he couldn't miss this opportunity. He replied firmly, "Yes, I'm very passionate about it. I want to learn so that Ivy can open her own shop in the future." Rose burst out laughing when she heard that. "Passion is great, but do you have any skills, or are you here to admire me?" That sentence made Levi blush. He was so flustered that he stammered, "No, I. I really want to learn a profession. Rose chuckled, stepped closer, and looked at him with a questioning gaze. I think you seem honest, but remember, this is a luxury hair salon. No, not a sidewalk barber shop. If you can learn, stay. If not, know your way out. While Rose was talking to Levi, the door opened and a man walked in. He was wearing a floral shirt and smelled strongly of perfume. He plopped down on a chair and smiled leisurely. Rose, I'm coming to you again. Rose glanced, her voice cold. What are you doing here? Washing my hair or disturbing me? He laughed heartily. Just washing my hair, but it would be great to have you to talk to. Rose did not answer, turned to look at Levi. I'll get a towel for the guest. Levi ran away in a hurry, his hands and feet so clumsy that he dropped the towel on the ground. Rose sighed and shook her head. Looks like I still have a lot to learn. When Levi turned back, the customer suddenly asked, teasingly, Who is this kid? Apprentice? His face looked sillier than the aquarium fish at my house. Rose curled her lips and replied briefly, I'm just learning a trade, but at least I'm more educated than you. That statement made him speechless, and Levi tried so hard to hold back his laughter that he almost bit his lip. The men around Rose were extremely lustful when they saw her. They always found excuses to get closer to her, but she didn't like those types of rude men. Her taste was for good guys from good families. At the end of the day, Levi was assigned to clean the shop. Rose sat on the chair, legs crossed, holding a cup of hot coffee, looking at him with a half-monitoring, half-joking gaze. She asked, So, do you think it's okay to work here? Levi looked up and answered Kevin honestly, Yes, it's very suitable. Rose nodded, took a sip of coffee. Good. But remember, if you stay here, you have to be able to withstand the pressure. Don't give up. This shop is not for weak boys. He nodded slightly. Levi knew in his heart that this was where he had to work hard, not only to learn the trade but also to prove himself to that beautiful and proud mistress. Levi gradually got used to working at the Purple Hair Salon. Every day he cleaned, made tea, learned how to wash hair, and watched Rose meticulously curl and trim customers' hair. Besides Rose, the salon also had Ivy and Kevin, the two main hairdressers. Ivy was the oldest, straightforward, cheerful, and very talkative. She often made Levi work hard, but also often slipped him a cake or a bottle of soda when he finished. Kevin was the opposite, quiet and always pensive. It was rumored that he had suffered a serious heartbreak and was as cold as ice. One day while cleaning, Levi accidentally dropped his comb on the floor. Ivy immediately said bluntly, Whoever dropped the comb is secretly in love with Rose. The whole shop burst into laughter. Levi was so embarrassed that his face turned red. Kevin smirked and teased him, Wipe it clean, or else Rose will not be able to sleep well tonight. That day, the shop was empty. Rose asked Levi to stay and clean up, lock the shop, and bring the key to her house. She said she was a bit tired today and wanted to go home early to rest. Levi nodded and accepted the paper with the address, feeling both nervous and confused. He carefully mopped the floor, arranged the things neatly, checked the doors and windows, then locked the shop and put the key in his pocket. Levi cycled to the address Rose gave him. Rose's house was in a quiet alley, a residential area full of pretty houses. It was a 3-story house painted an elegant cream color. The balconies on the second and third floors were filled with bright red bougainvillea, exuding a warm and elegant atmosphere. Levi stood in front of the black iron gate with the Levi flowers winding around it, hesitating whether to ring the bell or make a phone call. Finally, he rang the bell. The bell rang and there were light footsteps inside. The gate opened and a little girl about 7 years old with her hair tied in 2 cute buns peeked out at Levi. Her round eyes lit up with curiosity. She asked who he was. After hearing Levi say she had brought the key to his mother, she happily opened the gate and led him into the house. Rose's yard was not big but very neat with a stone table and chairs and an old mango tree providing shade. The little girl said her mother was taking a shower upstairs and told Levi to wait. Levi entered the living room. The space inside was airy, fully furnished but not ostentatious. A light gray leather sofa was placed in the middle of the room. On the glass table was a vase of fresh roses. The main wall was covered with landscape paintings, among which stood out a large photo of Rose's family. In the photo, Rose was wearing a graceful purple AO dye, standing next to a tall, stern-faced man in military uniform. Levi thought to himself that this must be her husband. He had heard from Ivy that Rose's husband was a military officer, often working away from home on an island. Levi sat on the sofa, feeling uneasy. From upstairs came the sound of running water, a gentle sound that seemed to stir his mind. Levi tried to focus on the vase of flowers in front of him, but his mind imagined Rose in the bathroom. Footsteps sounded from the stairs, and Rose appeared. Levi couldn't believe his eyes. She was only wearing a pure white towel. Her wet hair was loose over her shoulders. A few strands stuck to her cheeks. Her rosy skin glistened with water on her bare shoulders. Levi was embarrassed and lowered his head, not daring to look for long, but his heart felt like it was about to jump out of his chest. Sister Rose walked over, smiling gently. Levi stood up, fumbling to reach into his pocket for his keys, but he was so flustered that he accidentally took out a ballpoint pen. Seeing Levi's confused face, Sister Rose burst out laughing. She took the keys from his hand, told Levi to wait a moment while she changed, and then she would make him some water. When she returned, Rose was wearing comfortable clothes, a white t-shirt and tight shorts, both simple and youthful. She brought out 2 glasses of iced tea, put them on the table, and sat across from Levi. The little girl sat next to her mother, holding a tablet playing games. She asked Levi about his family and why he chose hairdressing. Levi shyly said that his family was in the countryside and he didn't have much money, so he wanted to learn a trade to be independent. Rose listened attentively, nodding occasionally, her eyes gentle. The little girl raised her head and stared at Levi, then suddenly asked, "Uncle, are you happy at work? Why does your face always look so silly?" Levi blushed and didn't know how to answer. Rose laughed and patted her daughter's head. "Mom hired Levi because he's hardworking and diligent. It's okay to be a little silly. Silly is cute." Hearing her say that, Levi suddenly felt strangely warm inside. When Levi left, Rose saw him off to the gate. As he walked through the door, she said to him in a gentle but meaningful voice, "Levi, try your best. One day I'll let you be the store manager. But remember, be good." Levi cycled home with a jumble of thoughts. Her words, her smile, her eyes, all of them were like a movie replaying over and over again in his head. That night, Levi lay in bed thinking about Rose. A strange feeling, both warm and fluttering, crept into his heart. After the evening at Rose's house, Levi saw that she had not changed in the way she treated him. She was still gentle but sharp, still had the same deep voice that every time she spoke, it was like electricity ran through Levi's heart. As for Levi, every time he saw her, he remembered the image of her wrapped in a white towel, her wet hair dripping with water. He was confused, blushing, and more clumsy than usual. Ivy noticed and teased, "Levi, these days you look like someone who has insomnia. Did you have a bad dream last night?" Levi scratched his head and said, "No." Ivy laughed heartily. "This kid has the looks of a lucky guy, but he's unlucky." One day, the shop was unusually empty. The customers were all men, and from their appearances, one could tell they weren't there to get their hair done. Levi stood in the corner cleaning and glanced at a man whose hair was being washed by Rose, his eyes half closed in enjoyment, his mouth constantly flirting. He said, "Rose, your hands are so soft. Many men must be crazy about you." Rose remained calm. While washing her hair, she replied, "Yes, my hands are soft because I wash hair for regular customers. But whether I'm crazy about it or not, I don't know." The rest of the customers burst out laughing. Another guy sitting waiting nudged Levi and said, "Kid, you work here, so you must know what the owner is like, right?" "She's married, but why is she still so beautiful?" Levi stuttered, not knowing how to answer. In the end, he could only say, "Yes, it's really beautiful, Uncle." He laughed out loud and patted Levi on the shoulder. "If only I were as young as you, I would try to flirt with you too." Levi wanted to crawl into the ground when he heard that. Meanwhile, Ivy, who was standing nearby, covered her mouth and giggled. In the afternoon, when the customers were leaving, Rose called Levi over. She said that today she would test his skills. Levi's face turned pale as a banana leaf after hearing that. Rose smiled and said, "I'm just testing you on how to wash your hair. It's not that difficult." "Why are you so nervous, like you're about to take a college entrance exam?" Ivy volunteered to be the customer for Levi to wash her hair. She lay down on the chair in a very professional manner, not forgetting to remind Levi, "Levi, be gentle. If you're too rough, Ivy will fall off the chair." Levi started washing his hair with trembling hands. However, things quickly went wrong. Levi forgot how to adjust the water, making it too hot, causing Ivy to scream, "Levi, are you going to boil me?" When it was time to wash his hair, his hands were clumsy. The shampoo hadn't been applied evenly before he rinsed it off, making Ivy's hair as slippery as grease. The whole shop couldn't help but laugh. Rose, standing next to him, laughed silently. "All right, I'll train you again from the beginning." Levi lowered his head in embarrassment, wanting to run to the back garden. One evening, Rose called Levi and said she needed someone to go shopping with her. Levi was both happy and worried. This was the first time she asked him to go somewhere other than work. He nodded immediately and said, "If you need anything, just tell me. I can help." Rose took Levi to a large supermarket. Levi thought it would be a normal shopping trip, but it turned out not to be. Rose picked up a lot of things, from shampoo, cosmetics, to snacks. He struggled to carry a bunch of bags and followed her through the aisles. When they reached the women's underwear section, Rose turned to Levi and asked, "Do you think this color suits you?" Levi stood frozen like a statue, his face flushed red. He could only bow his head and mumble, "I don't know, sister." Sister Rose laughed loudly and patted Levi's shoulder. "I was just joking. Looking at your silly face, you probably don't even know what that thing is used for." Levi was embarrassed and wished there was a hole here to jump into. After finishing her shopping, Rose told Levi to take everything back to her house. Levi obediently carried the heavy bag, thinking to himself that he looked more like a carrier than an apprentice. When he arrived at her house, Levi was putting things on the kitchen counter and breathing a sigh of relief. Rose suddenly invited him to stay for dinner. "Sit here, I'll cook." Levi stammered in refusal, saying he didn't dare bother her, but Rose quickly went into the kitchen. That day's meal was simple: fried eggs, vegetable soup, and braised fish. Rose asked Levi questions while eating. He felt like he had become a small part of Rose's family. The little girl occasionally interrupted to tease Levi, saying that he ate too slowly, and that if he didn't hurry, he would run out of food. Levi could only smile wryly. When leaving, Rose saw Levi off to the gate, not forgetting to remind him, "If you work hard, I will reward you." Levi cycled home, feeling happy, but he didn't know what he was happy about. Life at the barbershop passed by like that, full of funny and sad situations. Levi was often teased, but he felt the warmth from everyone. Especially every time Rose talked, Levi felt his heart beat faster. However, he still didn't understand the feelings growing inside him. Was it just admiration for a sister or something else? As time passed, Levi gradually improved. The clumsy hair washing sessions, the tea mixing mistakes, and the relationship issues were now just jokes at the hair salon. He started to get used to the job. His washing skills became more skillful, his movements were gentle, and he knew how to talk to make customers feel comfortable. Sister Rose always watched Levi, and whenever she saw him doing well, she nodded in satisfaction. Sometimes she didn't forget to pat his shoulder to encourage him. "Levi, I think you have a lot of potential. If you keep working hard like this, Ivy, you will definitely become a master craftsman." That sentence was like a spiritual medicine that made Levi work harder. The days in the shop were no longer just work, but like a small family. Sister Ivy used to tease Levi. but now she changed from silly boy to effective assistant. Brother Kevin, who was quiet, started to teach Levi small tips for cutting hair. Sister Rose told Levi to stay and learn how to mix dye. She stood close by and gave instructions little by little. Levi listened attentively, but the scent of rose from her made it difficult for him to concentrate. She looked at Levi and smiled. "Levi, you've been doing great lately. I'm so happy. Maybe I'll have to give this shop to you in the future." Levi was startled and stammered, Yes, I didn't dare think about that." Rose tilted her head and teased, "Why don't you like being a manager? Or do you want to do something else?" He bowed his head, not knowing how to respond. Her eyes lit up with warmth but also contained something that Levi didn't dare to think about. Lately, Rose has been asking Levi to stay after work to help with packing or minor repairs. Levi initially thought it was just a chore, but gradually those stays have become special. One night, when all the guests had gone home, Rose asked Levi to help clean up the warehouse. Together, they packed things. Occasionally, Rose would tell funny stories about the strange guests she had met. Once, she told a story about a guest who almost broke his chair because he wanted to stand up and dance after getting his hair cut. Levi couldn't stop laughing. Rose also laughed, but for some reason, Levi felt that her smile was different, warmer and more intimate than any smile he had ever seen. When she finished, Rose poured Levi a cup of hot tea and told him to sit down and rest. She looked at Levi, her eyes sparkling under the light. "Levi, I really like you. When I first met you, I thought you were just a clumsy kid, but now I see that you are very good and truly trustworthy." Levi held the cup of tea shyly. "Thank you." Sister Rose smiled. "Don't just say thank you. You have to be more confident. Someone like you, if you try, will be able to do much greater things." Those special evenings not only helped Levi learn a lot, but also made him and Rose closer. She began to share personal stories with Levi, from running a hair salon to how her daughter was always nagging. One time she told Levi about her husband, whom Levi only knew from a photo in the living room. She said he was a good man, but his job on a remote island meant that her family rarely got to be together, and that she often felt lonely, but for the sake of her child, she had to try. Hearing her say that, Levi felt his heart sink. He didn't know what to say. She listened silently. Rose looked at him and smiled lightly. "I'm fine, I'm used to it. There are difficult times, but I'm glad to have people like you by my side." One afternoon, Rose suddenly told Levi to go to the back of the shop. When he entered, Rose was holding a brand new shirt and gave it to him. "Levi, I think your shirt is too old and it doesn't suit a tailor from the shop Sac Tuoi. I bought this for you to try on." Levi was confused and quickly refused. "I don't dare accept it, sister." Rose's face was serious, but her voice was still gentle. "This is not a gift. I want you to wear it so that guests will see you as more professional." "Come on, try it on." Levi shyly took his shirt and went in to change. When he came out, Rose looked at him and smiled. It looks much brighter, right?" Sister Ivy walked in from somewhere, looked at Levi and laughed out loud. "My goodness, the kid looks quite stylish when dressed up." Levi scratched his head in embarrassment, while Rose smiled softly, her eyes filled with satisfaction. Gradually, Rose gave Levi more responsibilities. From arranging guest schedules to managing bills, she trusted him with everything. Levi worked carefully and thoughtfully, which made Rose feel more secure. Ivy once said, "Rose, Levi's family is so good. Do you plan to keep him here forever?" Sister Rose just smiled and replied, "I believe she will go further, but for now I want to keep her by my side." Levi couldn't hear those words, but he clearly felt Rose's concern through every look and every word of advice. In his heart, Rose's image became more and more engraved, not only as a boss but also as a sister, someone he always wanted to do well in everything to repay her trust. Levi now felt more than just admiration. It was something deeper that made him both happy and scared. Was this feeling real, or was it just a dream that Levi didn't dare to touch? That day, all the customers had left early, leaving only dim lights in the shop. Sister Rose stood cleaning the counter, while Levi was busy cleaning the tables and chairs. The atmosphere was quiet, but Levi's heart was in turmoil. Every time he caught sight of Sister Rose's figure, he felt as if something was wrong. Sister Rose turned back to look at Levi with a thoughtful look. "Are you done? If you're done, come into the warehouse with me for a bit. I have something to tell you." Hearing the word warehouse, Levi was slightly surprised. The small warehouse at the back of the shop was filled with tools and miscellaneous items, and no one usually went in unless they needed to get something. But he didn't dare ask anything, just nodded slightly. The warehouse was small but neat. The light from the ceiling light bulb created a cozy yet mysterious atmosphere. Sister Rose walked in first, Levi followed behind. His heart was pounding. Sister Rose closed the warehouse door and turned to look at Levi. Her eyes were different from usual, no longer the sharp gaze of a hair salon owner, but became gentle and filled with something difficult to say. Levi stopped, not daring to look directly at her. She spoke softly, her voice low but echoing in the small space. "Levi, I want to ask you something." He scratched his head in confusion. "Yes, go ahead." Rose stepped closer until Levi could smell the faint scent of rose on her, a scent he was familiar with, but now made his heart pound. She spoke slowly, each word etched into his mind. "Levi, do you know I really like you, not the normal kind of like, but a much more special feeling." Levi was stunned, his eyes wide. He didn't know how to react. He just stood there confused. Sister Rose continued, her voice becoming softer and softer. "Since you came here, I feel like my life has changed a lot. I feel happier and more relaxed. You are not only a good employee, but also someone I trust and rely on." Levi was so confused that he didn't know where to put his hands and feet. "Sister, what do you mean by that?" Sister Rose took another step, the distance between them now so close that Levi could feel her breath. Her eyes looked straight at him, both gentle and strong. She said, "Levi, I like you." Levi's heart stopped beating. He couldn't believe his ears. Everything was spinning. He stammered, "Aye, but I'm just a kid." Sister Rose smiled softly, reaching out to lightly touch Levi's shoulder. "Yes, you're young, but that doesn't matter. What matters is the feeling you give me." Levi took a step back, eyes looking down at the ground, not daring to meet her gaze. I don't know what to do. Levi, can you help me relieve it? My husband has been away on a business trip for so long. I'm really lacking. I'm craving it so much, Levi. Please help me. I'm really uncomfortable." She walked over, put her hand on his shoulder, then suddenly leaned down and kissed him lightly on the cheek. That sudden but gentle kiss made Levi freeze. He stood still, his heart pounding like a drum, his whole body stiff. Levi bowed his head and kissed Rose on the cheek. She closed her eyes and Levi placed a kiss on her plump lips. The kiss was not strong or fiery, but gentle and slow. It seemed like the kiss would last forever. Levi ran his hands all over Rose's silky back. Rose clutched Levi's shoulders tightly. Rose's breathing began to quicken. Levi left Rose's lips and slid down to her neck. Levi's arms held Rose tightly to him. Rose leaned back slightly and tilted her head back. Levi inhaled all over her fairy tale-like face. In the midst of the romance, Rose spoke up forcefully. "Don't stop." Levi hugged Rose tightly and kissed her harder. Then slowly Levi raised his hand to Rose's breasts, feeling how it gradually became. Levi's lips still hadn't left Rose's lips. He reached behind and unbuttoned Rose's shirt. Levi lifted Rose up and brought her into the bedroom. Rose's hands hugged her neck and looked at Levi. Entering the room, Levi hurriedly took off everything on Rose. Rose was embarrassed. "Oh dear, I feel a little ticklish." Rose's voice seemed to falter with each word. Rose's words were almost broken, but Levi didn't hear anything. Before Levi's eyes was a beautiful landscape painting. "Turn off the light," Rose said as Levi leaned down and placed a kiss on Rose's lips. "I'm embarrassed." That night, the small room was quiet, with only the sound of the wind blowing through the narrow window. The pale yellow light from the old table lamp cast a long shadow on the wall, making Rose's shadow gently fall on the stained wall. The room was originally simple and narrow, but since Rose was there, everything suddenly became strangely warm, as if just one breath from Rose could fill every empty space. And then the two found each other in the warmth of their bodies, no longer any distance between them. Rose's skin was soft under Levi's fingers like a smooth silk ribbon that Levi couldn't hold back. Rose's body pressed against Levi's, the rhythm of their touches becoming in sync. Every movement was strangely synchronized, as if both of us Levi had been waiting for this moment for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked softly, reminding him that time was never eternal. But in Levi's arms, Rose let out a very soft sound. That sound echoed in Levi's heart, as if to confirm that time no longer had any meaning. There were only two people entangled in each other, not in a hurry but not wanting to stop. The bed sheets were tangled around the two people, mixed with their rapid breathing, sometimes settling down in tight hugs as if afraid that when the sky was bright, everything would disappear like a dream. Rose's body under Levi was struggling slightly. Each of Rose's movements was like a wordless melody full of emotion but also filled with tenderness. Levi and her had spent more than 2 hours making love, ending with a climax that made both of them fly on cloud 9. Finally, when the storm had passed, Levi lay still, feeling Rose's steady breathing on his neck. Rose rested her head on Levi's shoulder, her arms wrapped around Levi as if she wanted to hold on to something that she knew wouldn't last long. They had been doing it for over an hour. Rose was like the dry desert that Levi had watered enough today. When they were tired, they both stopped and said goodbye to each other to go home. He wondered if Rose really liked him. Was he worthy of her feelings? And did he really feel anything for her? Those thoughts kept swirling in Levi's head, making it impossible for him to sleep. But deep down, he knew one thing. That kiss had changed everything. Levi couldn't deny that he had long had admiration, a special feeling for Rose. But he always thought it was just a one-sided feeling, that Rose would never pay attention to a boy like him. Now, when she confessed her feelings, Levi felt both happy and scared. He didn't know what the future would hold, but he knew that he was no longer the naive boy who first entered the purple hair salon. Back at the inn, he thought back to what he had just done with Rose. Then he imagined it and masturbated by himself. It suddenly started to rain that day. The hair salon had just closed, and the customers had left early. Only Levi and Rose were left to arrange the last of their belongings. The sound of the rain pattering on the roof and the cold wind blowing made the atmosphere in the salon even more quiet. Rose looked outside and sighed softly. It's raining so hard. I don't know when it will stop. Levi, do you have a raincoat? Levi shook his head, running his hand through his slightly damp hair. No, I didn't bring it, and in this weather I probably won't be able to come back early. Rose was silent for a moment, then suddenly turned to Levi, her eyes both ambiguous and decisive. Okay. I know a motel nearby. Let's go in there to take shelter from the rain for a while. Wait for it to stop, then go home. Hearing the words motel, Levi stood still like a statue. All sorts of scenarios immediately came to mind. But then, seeing Rose's naturalness, he tried to calm himself down. It's probably just a place to take shelter from the rain. It's nothing, he thought. The two of them quickly put on thin coats and ran through the pouring rain. The streets were deserted, with only the flickering streetlights and puddles reflecting their shadows. Rose walked ahead, her high heels clicking on the wet pavement. Levi followed, his mind blank but his chest beating strangely. Finally, the two of them arrived in front of a small motel hidden in an alley. The light was dim in the rain, and a red light was shining from inside. Rose turned to Levi and smiled. Come in and take shelter for a while. You can't go back in this weather. Levi didn't say anything, just nodded and followed her inside. The motel was a cozy but cramped space. A young receptionist sitting behind the counter smiled knowingly as soon as she saw Rose and Levi enter. It's raining, guys. Let's rent a room to rest for a bit. Rose nodded in response with a slight smile. Yes, please give me a room that is a little more airy. The receptionist handed over the key, glanced at Levi, then turned to Rose. Room 203. Second floor on the left. Rose took the keys and turned to wave at Levi. Let's go. When she got to her room, Rose turned on the light. The room had a double bed covered with white sheets, a small table by the window, and an old fan whirring. The air in the room was both warm and a little stuffy. Levi stood stiffly at the door, looking around, not daring to enter. Rose turned around and saw his confused look, then burst out laughing. What's wrong? What are you standing there for? Come in and sit down. I'm not going to eat you. Levi scratched his head and entered, keeping his distance. He sat on the edge of the bed, his back stiff as wood, his eyes fixed on the ground. Sister Rose closed the door and sat down next to Levi, her hand on his shoulder, her voice teasing, Levi, are you nervous? I just invited you in here to take shelter from the rain. What's there to be afraid of? Levi forced a smile. No, I'm not scared. It's just that I'm a bit strange. Sister Rose smiled, her eyes softened. Okay, just relax. Consider this a temporary resting place. No need to think too much. Time passed, but the rain showed no signs of stopping. The steady sound of rain falling outside the window mixed with the soft breathing of the two people in the small room. Come sit down here with me, Levi. This isn't our first time together, so why are you still shy? Rose said, and then approached Levi. She kissed him passionately on the lips, making him unable to control himself anymore. Levi stopped pretending. He picked Rose up and gently placed her on the bed. The two didn't say a word to each other. The space now had only the sound of rain and the creaking of the old bed. Just then there was a knock on the door, startling both of them. Levi looked at Rose, who frowned as if she didn't understand what was going on. They both stopped and got dressed. She went to open the door and her face immediately changed color. Standing in front of the door was Rose's sister-in-law, a woman in her 40s, her eyes as sharp as knives, staring at her. It turned out that this was Rose's sister-in-law. The sister-in-law spoke coldly. Rose, what are you doing here? And who is this? Before Rose could say anything, her sister-in-law looked at Levi with suspicion in her eyes. This is your employee, right? Why did you two go to the motel together? The air seemed to freeze as Levi froze, while Sister Rose tried to stay calm. Sister Rose took a deep breath and replied calmly, Sister, he and I just came here to take shelter from the rain. Nothing happened. But the sister-in-law was not so gullible. Shelter from the rain? There are plenty of places to shelter from the rain. Why did you go to a motel? Don't think I don't know anything. Levi felt like the weight of the world was on his shoulders, wanting to explain, but every time he opened his mouth, he didn't know what to say. Sister Rose turned back to look at Levi, her eyes telling him to be quiet, then faced her sister-in-law. If you don't believe me, I don't know how to explain, but don't think wrongly of me and him. The sister-in-law stared at the two of them, her eyes scrutinizing them. After a while, she turned around and left, but not forgetting to say, Rose, be careful. If anything happens, don't blame me for not warning you. The door closed, the atmosphere in the room became heavy. Levi lowered his head, and Rose sighed as if she had just gone through a battle. She turned to Levi, smiled awkwardly. Don't worry, I will handle this. Just pretend nothing happened. But Levi knew deep down that things would never be the same again. That day at the motel seemed like it would go smoothly, but Levi didn't expect that the real storm would start from here. After that night of sheltering from the rain, Levi went to work as usual, trying to ignore the suspicious gaze of his sister-in-law Rose. But that silence was just a sign of something bigger. One afternoon, when Levi had just finished cleaning the tables and chairs in the shop, Sister Rose walked out from inside, her face filled with fatigue. She handed Levi a glass of orange juice, her voice hoarse. Levi, have some water. You look worried these past few days. Levi smiled awkwardly, but before he could reply, the door to the shop suddenly opened. Two tall, fierce-looking men walked in. The whole shop went silent. Rose saw them, her face pale. The older man with sharp eyes spoke in a deep voice. Rose, who is this kid? Levi was confused. and Rose stepped forward to block him, her voice trembling. "This is my employee. What's the matter?" The man was Rose's husband. He didn't answer, just turned to look at Levi from head to toe and said, "Employee or the reason your husband's family lost face?" Levi's face paled, feeling like every word the man said was a knife piercing his heart. He stammered, I just work here. It's nothing." The man snorted, his eyes filled with disdain. "There's nothing. Why did you two go to a motel together? Do you think her husband's family doesn't know anything?" Sister Rose stood in front of Levi, her voice firmer. "Brother, I already explained. It was raining heavily that day. He and I just went there to take shelter from the rain. Nothing else happened." Levi left the barber shop. His legs were heavy, but his heart was determined. He knew he had to leave, even though his heart wanted to stay. Sometimes feelings cannot overcome invisible barriers, and the people involved are forced to accept letting go to protect the best for the other person. As for Rose, although the hair salon was still bustling as usual, nothing could fill the void that Levi left behind. She stood silently by the window, her eyes looking far away at the alley where he left, as if waiting for something that could never come back. Life is like that. There are people who come to teach us how to love, but sometimes they have to leave so we can learn how to grow up. The story ends here, leaving a feeling of both sadness and relief. Levi and Rose, two people, two fates, although they have gone on different paths, but they will certainly always remember each other as an indelible mark. Thank you for joining us and listening to the story. Hopefully, through this story, we can all feel the power of love, tolerance, and the silent sacrifices that each person makes for each other. Ladies and gentlemen, our story today will stop here. Thank you for taking the time to watch the entire video. Hopefully, the details and emotions in the story have brought you interesting and meaningful moments. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below the video to let us know your opinion. And don't forget to click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any stories in the future. Each of your subscribe buttons and a like will be the motivation for Jane and the program production team to create more attractive videos. And now, see you in the next videos. Wish you a great day.